you spent almost 4 decades now as a Hall of Famer. Almost 4 times as long as you were a big leaguer, you've been a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to be able to look back today and know your place in Cooperstown and to come back every year like you do to the Hall of Fame?
Well, you know, strangely enough, when I played baseball, mainly with the Pirates, but then with the Cubs, and then later on with Cleveland 1 year, I never thought about a Hall of Fame or anything at all. We went up there and played a game, and I saw my old manager, Frankie Freese, was in the Hall of Fame. He was there, and then all of a sudden I started thinking, my God, what an honor this is. And I didn't go in on the first ballot by far, even though I led the league 7 straight years in home runs. And I was lucky to get in because at my 15th year, they elected me in. And of course, when you look around the room and you see names that are so big and so important, you start to realize what a big deal it is, being in the Hall of Fame. And then the thing that was interesting, the Baseball Hall of Fame is really tough to get in. You have to have 75% of the vote and that stuff. And I finally got in. And I wondered why, because 1 year I had 54 home runs, another year 51 home runs, and this is before steroids. And nobody had done that in a long time. And so it started to be a symbol that you can't get easily.
No. You were born in New Mexico, right?
Santa Rita, New Mexico. The second best player out of New Mexico was Nancy Lopez. I was the first. That's kind of a strange way to back into it because, of course, Nancy was a great player. And she married Ray Knight, and of course Ray Knight was also a great player. And the one thing about Ray Knight is that he caddied for her after he retired from baseball, and she fired him. I thought that was kind of a strange arrangement for a marriage.
How did your family end up in Southern California?
My dad died at I was 4.5 years old, and he had an ear infection, and he died when I was 4.5. My mother was a nurse in World War I, and she went over in France, and she had met my father in New Mexico. And they got married at the age of 40, which was old for to have a child, and I was the child. She had a friend in Alhambra, California, which is contiguous to LA, and I grew up there, and I was really basically raised because she worked all the time and never remarried.
Did you, when you were a kid, did you envision being a big league baseball player? Was that your...
Never even thought about it.
Really?
But I loved sports. And in those days, then we're talking, I was born in 1922, the only way you could make a living in sports, other than being a prize fighter or a wrestler or something like that, was you had to play baseball. And my neighbors were people named Bodkin, and they had a son that was 4 years older than I, and I used to shag for him. And I loved playing baseball. And finally, after about, I guess maybe 2 months or something like that, shagging balls on a vacant lot, I said I want to hit. And they finally let me hit, and that was even more fun.
Now you signed with the Pirates in 41, is that right?
Actually it was 1940. I graduated from high school in 1940, and I didn't sign. I was chased around by quite a few scouts, And I played for the Yankee Juniors. It was sponsored by the Yankees and run by a man named Dan Crowley, who worked with Bill Essex, a great scout for the Yankees. And I signed up. He said, you sign with the Yankees, you're going to be in the minor leagues 7 years. And that was true, because in those days they had nothing but ball players. And so they said, you sign with the Pirates and we'll get you in the major leagues in 2 or 3 years. And that's what happened. I signed and went to Albany and played 2 years at Albany. And then the war came along, and I signed up there to be a Navy pilot, which I became, and I flew in World War II.
Did you have any piloting experience before that?
Not at all, no.
And you're a big guy. Pilots often were smaller guys.
Yeah, but I was a pretty big kid, and I was probably 6'1" or something like that. And of course, Navy pilots, it was hard to get in the Navy. And Army pilots got in there because they used a lot more Army flyers than they did Navy.
So where did you fly in the Navy?
Well, I was stationed originally in California, San Luis Obispo, and then went to St. Mary's, which also was a introduction to flying in the Navy. And then went to Livermore, and that's when I started flying Stearmans. And you could do anything in the Stearman. I mean, every maneuver in the world was a two-wing airplane, and that's where you really learn to fly. And then I went to Corpus and got my wings.
And where did you fly during the war?
I flew in the South Pacific, but not really any action. There was by that time the war was starting to slow down. But I did fly on a submarine and things like that, and air sea rescue.
Wow, where were you stationed?
It sounds like I was on a trip. I was stationed in Hawaii, and then I went to. That was the end of my training, and I flew PBMs and PBYs and that sort of thing, seaplanes.
Did you continue flying once you got out of the Navy?
I didn't at the beginning, and then I found out that I could get some extra pay, and they paid you if you stayed in the reserve. I didn't stay in the reserve, though, because I knew I could play in the minor leagues and then later on the majors. And so I really didn't get in the reserve. And then when the Korean War came up, all my guys, my friends that were in the reserve, went back in. And of course it happened in a way to Ted Williams.
Right.
Yeah, he did the same thing. He had to go back in and actually fly combat.
So 46 comes, and you go to spring training with the Pirates. Did you feel like you were going to be able to make the club that year?
I knew I was going to make the club. And of course that was sure guesswork. I didn't know whether I'd make the club. I had signed to play in Toronto the year before I went in the service. That was the highest league at the time in the minor leagues. And then I went spring training with the Pirates. I had 13 home runs in 30 games in spring training, and that got me a job in the major leagues.
And then you lead the league in home runs your first year, 23. But Forbes Field was a notoriously big park. Did you?
You mean you were living then?
Well, my grandparents and my parents told me about it. Obviously, did you when you saw Forbes? Did you think, hey, I can be a home run king in this park and in that Cavernous Park?
No, it's just the other way around. I walked into that ballpark. We opened the season in St. Louis. And I had a home run in St. Louis off Howie Paulette. It was a great pitcher, left-hand pitcher. And I went to Forbes Field. We took the train and went into Pittsburgh. When I got off the train at 10 o'clock in the morning, I looked around and I could hardly see the next person next to me. I mean, the smoke from the sulfur and the coal mines and the steel mills I said, my God almighty. And then I saw the ballpark. And the ballpark, it was 360 down the left field line, a big scoreboard that stood above that, and 456 feet to center field. I said, I'm going to kill that child that signed me. And his name was Thurston. Well, fortunately, I didn't kill him.
Also, you played some center field for the Pirates.
I opened up in center field, and I can run then. And I was maybe 6'1", and I weighed about 170 pounds, and I opened up in center field. And as we went along, I moved over to left field, and mainly played most of my time at left field. I did play some first base, and unfortunately for me and the Pittsburgh Pirates, we didn't have good teams. One year in 1948, we almost got to the World Series. But that was the only year, and we finished last so many years that it was just ridiculous. And then one year we lost 112 games. That record wasn't broken until the Mets came along. In 1962, they lost 120.
And 47, you hit Hank Greenberg. The Pirates got Hank Greenberg.
That was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Because of Greenberg Gardens?
Well, we went to spring training in 47, and we trained for the first time in Florida. And we had trained in San Bernardino, California, all the other time, which was real nice for me. It was about 50 miles from our home. But we did that. But the first day of spring training with Greenberg, I started to go on to get dressed and for linen calls, and he said, "Hey kid," and I had never met Greenberg, and he said, "Hey kid, how about taking some extra batting practice?" He was notorious for working at being a better ball player. Of course, he had 58 home runs one year, and that was pretty strong right there. And he had a week to hit 2 more to tie Babe Ruth. And so anyway, I said, yeah, I'd love to. And I met him for the first time. And he was just unbelievable. I mean, he taught me work habits that were fantastic. I took a lot of batting practice, and it was because of him. And he didn't change my swing, but he did tell me one thing that was really important to me, and that was that to get up on the plate. And that means moving as close as you can to home plate. And that way I made them pitch me inside, and that way I could hit a lot of home runs. And the interesting story about Hank, I think, is that Billy Herman was our manager that year. And he wanted to send me to the minor leagues. Greenberg went into the office. Frank McKinney was the president of the Pittsburgh Pirates at that time. And he said, don't send this kid out, he's going to be all right. Well, I wasn't all right. I had only 3 home runs going into May. And Billy Herman wanted to send me to the minor leagues. And with that point, I started, for some reason, it all clicked in. What Greenberg was trying to make me do, and I finally got to the point. And I had 48 home runs the rest of the year, and ended up with a total of 51.
Did he help with your average went up too? Your average went up by 70 points.
Well, of course, I was hitting so many home runs, and it worked. Everything he told me worked, but it took about 2 months for it to kick in. And I stayed with him. I believed him. And he's the guy that really set me going.
I think you had 14 home runs in August that year?
That was the most in the month of August at that time.
Did you, the press started talking about you chasing the Babe. Were you thinking, hey, this is viable, that I can get over?
I sure was. And I got untold mail of, if you break Babe Ruth's record, we're going to kill you. And out of that, I got a note, and it was done like in the movies. It was pieced out by having cut out words out of a newspaper and making it a sentence, And they said he was going to kill me because I was going to break the record. And I didn't take it seriously. But it was turned over to the FBI, and Hoover and the FBI got involved, and we followed the instructions on the note, and that was to take a car to Ambridge, Pennsylvania, and they gave a guy, they ordered one of their men to take my place. I was to get in the cab, and I was to go to Ambridge, have a package that was $4,000 and odd dollars. And this other guy was there, got out of the car, picked the package up, and it didn't have the money in it. And he didn't show up. They wrote the note. And then about 2 weeks later, he wrote me another note and said he was going to kill me, and it was right around the 4th of July. And nobody would sit next to me in the dugout because the firecrackers and the sands were going off, and it sounded like gunshot. Well, anyway, they caught him, and he was a visiting club house boy.